graphene is a great material. It's a wonderfully interesting form of carbon, and yes, it has applications that we're working on in my group on the development of all carbon solar cells, a completely new class of solar cells based on carbon nanostructures. But we've also just shown that graphene could be used to desalinate water with 100 times faster permeability than the best RO systems. And we also use graphene as thermoelectrics, among actually a number of other possible applications. So graphene is a wonderfully interesting material. And graphene is a nice example of what we can do with materials design today that we couldn't do even just 10, 20 years ago. So graphene is simply a one sheet of carbon. It's an atomically, one atom thick sheet made of carbon. And just a generation ago, if we thought about what carbon can be, we would have said diamond and graphite. But today, there are dozens of other forms of carbon, from nanotubes to fullerenes to single layers of graphite, which is what graphene is, to all sorts of very interesting nanostructured materials made out of carbon. Each of which has its own interesting and unique properties and therefore potential applications. So it's as if we've taken this element in the periodic table, and we've taken this periodic table, which is a flat piece of paper, and we've given it a whole nother dimension. And by designing materials from the scale of the atom, we're able to really probe that dimension and see what it can do. We work at the scale of the atom, and we also work at the scale of the device and the system. And one of the questions that we had was, what would the ideal shape be for a solar cell if you built it in 3 dimensions as opposed to the traditional flat panels? And it turns out that the answer is non-trivial. The shapes that we find by engineering them first again computationally and then by building them and testing them, those shapes are actually interesting and complex. And the advantages of building a structure in 3 dimensions, a solar cell in 3 dimensions, is that you can, first of all, get a lot more power as a function of height. So if you have an area confined application, this can be a real advantage. But also, you get about 8 to 8.5 hours of useful electricity during the day, because you get the same power curve as if you had dual axis tracking, which means that the amount of power you get goes up to the maximum right at sunrise and stays there until sunset. And that's with no moving parts. So there's interesting sort of new opportunities by going into 3 dimensions that aren't available in 2 dimensions. And I should say, we've also found, we first designed them in the computer and then we built them. And when we did the designs in the computer, well, we didn't simulate weather because that's hard, so we left that out. But then when we built them, we had a lot of rainy days, which at first was frustrating because I wanted to match the computations, which were for sunny days. What we found out, though, was the data for the rainy day structures were very interesting, because in 3 dimensions you can take advantage of scattered light more efficiently, and therefore these structures take less of a hit on a cloudy day than a flat panel. So it's a very interesting phase space that we've been opening up. We do have a few partnerships in our 3dPV work with companies that are going to be testing them in the field. The work that we've done in my lab has been at the scale of sort of 1-foot prototypes, and what we've built and shipped to our partners are sort of more the meter scale prototype, where there are potentially additional questions that need to be thought of and answered, especially regarding the power electronics for that size scale. And once we have sort of more of a sense of answers to those questions, then we'll be building larger prototypes. We have some designs for a 4-meter tall tower.